For years, Americans were told not to believe their own eyes, even when the footage showed endless lines of migrants pouring across the southern border. We also saw overwhelmed towns, shelters, and even officials admitting the system was buckling. The American public was expected to accept the game, and oddly, also that calling it an open border was somehow hysterical or racist. But at some point, reality becomes too big to spin. The entire world could see the obvious. America did have an open border, and yet, perhaps one of the biggest progressive voices in media today, Mehdi Hasan, has declared this wasn't the case. Now, all of this happened on the Trigonometry podcast, where Mehdi Hasan was invited as a guest, and they were talking about some of the policies that the left had gone a bit crazy on. And I feel like this actually took even the host by surprise, that someone like Mehdi, who you would assume would actually understand what the actual meaning of an open border and what that implies generally would mean, he resorted to outright denying that that was the case, despite what we have all been seeing for quite some time now, at least before Donald Trump came into power. Now, let me just quickly show you the actual video, and we'll see what Mehdi actually says here.
Look, it's a good point, but also as well, we have to admit that there have been fundamental failings on the left. For instance, the border, having an open border.
There's no open border, France. Where's the open border?
Well, Trump has closed it, but before there was an open border.
It wasn't. What's your definition of an open border?
Well, you look...
Millions of illegals coming in.
That doesn't mean it's open. That just means they managed to come in illegally. That just means the border wasn't as secure as you wanted it to be.
Hold on a second.
Open border means I could just walk into America. Nobody could do that.
Well, hold on. If millions of people are able to walk into my house and I say, I've got an open door policy to my house, you go, that's not an open door policy. It just means people got in. I mean, come on.
No, I'm being very serious. If you want to use your house analogy, if you opened your house door and said, everyone come in, no, I'm not going to stop you, then fine, that is an open door policy. If people come into your house in the window in the middle of the night while you're calling the police...
That you left open.
Well, did they leave open?
Well, clearly, because the moment Donald Trump was elected, he closed the window.
Well, he closed it completely, which is ridiculous, because now you can't even claim asylum, which is a legal right. Joe Biden actually deported more people than Trump did in his first term. He actually detained and deported.
We're not talking about deportations. Hold on, let's just focus on the open...
Yes.
Mehdi, let's just... We're having a great discussion, and we're really...
Sorry, you triggered me with open border. But
clearly.
Yeah.
Yes.
But actually, I think we should talk about the issue.
Go on.
And we don't get triggered about it.
Go on.
Under the Democrats,
Yes.
unlike under both Labour and Conservatives in our country...
Numbers went up.
It's not just that numbers went up. I always give the stat. I came to Britain in 1996. When I came to Britain, 55,000 people a year net were coming in legally. More people now come into Britain illegally every year. Now, to me, you can argue about language, but when you have that, and in this country, in the United States, literally millions of people coming in illegally, and you can see that when there's a change of administration, that stops.
Okay.
You can disagree with us, at the extremes, and I think probably all of us do. But that, to describe that as an open border policy, I think it's quite reasonable, don't you?
No, because open border suggests anyone could walk into America. And
they did. Millions of people did.
And millions of people didn't. Millions of people got detained. Millions of people got mistreated in camps. I mean, Joe Biden was not some dove on the border. Biden and Harris put together the most draconian border security legislation, which, by the way, Trump told Republicans not to vote for because he wanted more people to come in so he could win the election. But they put together... I'm on the left. I was criticizing Biden and Harris for being hawks on certain things. For example, child separation. For example, putting children, all of this stuff. They borrowed a lot of Trump policies. For the first year of their administration, they kept the same rule that Trump used under the pandemic to just kick people out, which was a nonsense rule. Did a lot of people come in? Of course they did. Record numbers came in. But again, why? Was it just because of an open border, or was it because of push factors, not just pull factors? What was going on in Central America in 2021 and 2022? The actual crises that drove people out, not just economic migrants, but yes, refugees as well.
This is why you're triggering me with all respect, because I walk around the United States.
It's called trigonometry. Just keep triggering each other.
So that's why we're having this discussion. I mean, as I walk around the cities of the United States, and we travel here regularly, I'm shocked by the number of homeless people, right? And you could say, well, look, the push factors, the people who don't have somewhere to live, so that's why they're coming into your house. No, they're coming into your house because you've left the door open. And that's what was happening under the Democratic Party.
So that's not quite true. So let's look at the numbers. When Biden left office, right, in 2024, there were fewer people coming in than in Donald Trump's last year of office in the first term. That's just a fact. Go look at the numbers. The trends were down. You've got to look at trends. Clearly there was a peak. I'm not disputing that.
Okay.
In 21, 22, huge peak. I was at MSNBC, we covered it all the time.
Stick with that point.
Yeah, let's have a quick look there. It's very clear, especially if we go back a little bit here to the actual numbers. It's very clear that what Mehdi is saying is a complete lie. And honestly, I think people like Mehdi are just a bunch of hypocrites because number one, there's this new idea. Well, perhaps it's not necessarily new, but it's come to be used a lot more, which is the fact that America was settled illegally, and therefore nobody can be really an illegal migrant or illegal on stolen land. This is a line that is repeated by people like Mehdi or people on the broader left these days. I mean, we all saw what Billie Eilish said at the Grammys, was it? I can't even recall. I don't watch those shows, so I wouldn't even know these days. But it is very clear that a lot of these people aren't being very forthright and they're not being truthful about their actual ideas when it comes to immigration. And let's get this very clear. Like people like Mehdi, they try to make it out like immigration is this magic spell. Like it's very hard to control, design, or even adjust policies when it comes to specifically immigration into Western countries. But that is not reality at all. I mean, you look at virtually every other country, most countries outside the West, and they impose rather strict rules on who can immigrate to their countries, who can become citizens, permanent residents, who can work in their countries, all of that. Like you look at Gulf countries, you look at where Mehdi Hassan actually, or his parents came from, which is India. You look at all these countries and they have very strict rules as to who can enter, who can work, who could participate in politics, for example. I mean, we see people do a lot of political campaigning in Gulf countries and even Mehdi's parents' homeland in India, where these governments immediately round these people up and deport them. And going back to this thing where immigration is just this thing which you can't control, it just happens. It just exists in a vacuum. That's what they all make it sound like, especially with these arguments like, oh no, there wasn't an open border, but a lot of people came in. That doesn't even make sense. But I think the greatest evidence against this is Donald Trump. Genuinely. You look at these numbers and you can see a downwards trend from 2016 onwards up until around 2020, where it was really low and then it just jumps up. Now, of course, there might be factors around wars and instability in Central American countries. We know that. But at the same time, actually enforcing rules, at the end of the day, that's still up to a government. Regardless of what happens in other countries, you do realize you can control the borders and who actually crosses it, yes? Because, I mean, even if you think about Australia, for example, there was bipartisan support in terms of not allowing people to come on boats into the country. Because that used to be a thing until they put a stop to it and said, you know what? You're never going to get resettled in Australia if you arrive here illegally on a boat. And that is exactly what happened. Now, of course, there might be 50 people who are able to sneak past whatever the defenses there are to stop people like that from coming in. But that's just a very tiny number. But the reality is, once those rules were imposed, the numbers dropped drastically. And we can once again see that in America, where after Donald Trump came into power, and I'll show you guys this, after he came into power, net immigration is the lowest in 50 years. Or in fact, it's negative for the first time in a very long time. You can have a look at this graph here. Like, this is after Donald Trump came into power, and it's all gone into negative. And yet people like Mehdi are arguing that this is just impossible. Like, there's no way this could happen because border control, it's completely out of our control. And it's just really weird because he has to understand he's clearly a legal immigrant and he's gone through the hard yards. I think he has, being born in the UK. And yet, at the moment, in his new country, as a citizen of the United States, it doesn't really sound like he is really for enforcing the laws of the land. Now, I've spoken about the whole idea of seeking refuge being illegal, right? I mean, even that, like Mehdi doesn't tell you, even that you don't actually have to provide that right to people. You really don't. It's just a piece of paper that you signed, like international treaties you signed with the UN that says you have to do this. Realistically, the only person that could enforce something like that in a country that you rule over is really you. You decide what those rules are, you decide who to give asylum to, and you decide who not to give asylum or refugee status to. Like, I'm really sick of this world where people like Mehdi and the broader left, even in places like Australia, they all pretend like, when it comes to this particular issue, no one has any ability to adjust it, to stop it, to do anything to it. Like we see it in Australia where we're seeing record levels of migration in the past couple of years once the left-wing Albanese government came into power. And yet they all make it sound like there's nothing they can do. Like it still keeps going up and there's nothing they can do about it. And yet we saw during COVID, they were able to shut down the borders and those numbers came to zero. So yes, there is something you can do. And I think the pandemic is another great example of how hypocritical all these people are, because all over the West, all these countries that are ruled by the left and say, oh, there's nothing we can do about the borders. During COVID, suspiciously, they were able to do a lot about it. They were able to completely shut the borders, completely stop people from coming in. And this sometimes even included citizens of those countries. So yeah, it does sound like border enforcement is something you simply need to decide on. You choose what you do at your borders. And what we do know is for a long time under the Biden administration in America, they chose to have open borders. And if we are to trust people like Elon Musk, there was a plan there. Like 10 million people, even more than that, coming in illegally. All those people suddenly get naturalized or they go to sanctuary cities and they somehow granted the right to vote, similar to citizens in those states. If those are swing states, yeah, you've just flipped elections for forever. You've flipped all these red states to blue states forever. And I think there's a lot of merit behind that idea that this is indeed what they were planning to do. And I think a lot of people saw through those plans, and that is exactly why Donald Trump, regardless of the type of person he is, I think that played a big role in why he won the last election. Now, the other weird thing about immigration is the left also, they don't talk about this, but I try to talk about this a lot, which is the left realistically should think about sustainable immigration, because a lot of the people behind it are large corporations who want to lower wages of people actually in these countries. Now we see it everywhere. Like they bring in tons and tons of people, naturalize them or give them working rights. Suddenly there's a lot of competition in the job market, and you don't have to pay people as much anymore. You don't have to pay Americans very much, or if you're British or Australian or European, you don't have to pay any of these people very much money anymore, because there's so many more people suddenly who would work for significantly less. But and funny enough, what is significantly less to them, they feel like is a lot more, because it's better than anything else they might have earned from these other countries that they are originally from. So it really benefits these corporations, and yet the left, they are suddenly not for the average worker or the working class. They don't want that. They always want you to blame big corporations and billionaires, and yet when it comes to this specific issue, they don't want to talk about it, which is weird to me. Now you can look here where it says, since Trump took office, more jobs have gone to native-born Americans than foreign-born by a very significant margin. And this plays back to how net immigration has fallen, and I believe it might be one of the few Western countries, maybe Denmark's up there, one of the few Western countries where this has indeed happened. And how is this a bad thing? Like, in places like America, the Democrats and the broader left are really trying to fight hard to prevent this from happening. Now, even if it is legal immigration, I mean, there are a lot of problems around loopholes and people gaming the system. I mean, you look at certain visa types, even in America, like H-1B, it's all being gamed by big corporations, especially big corporations based outside, or their origin is outside of America, like in places like India. They use these specific visa types to game the system and pay people less, or and drive wages down even more for most people or most American workers. This has to be a left-wing issue, and yet I guess it is not these days. So it's a really weird world that we live in. Now, quick note before we move on, please remember to give the video a like and hit subscribe. The channel is almost entirely fan supported, so if you want to support the work and the mission behind it, consider joining Patreon. That's what keeps the channel alive and gives you early access. It's completely ad-free on long and uncensored videos, written articles, and member-only chats. It's weird because even when I look at Mehdi's homeland in the UK, now they have no-go zones that are forming its own security groups or or apparatus to go after people who with wrong opinions, I guess. And this is in Manchester. Like, look at this. They are actually forming something like a brown shirt organization and we'll have to be honest about this. It is done to intimidate people who might not like the changes they're seeing in these towns, who might not like the fact that churches are getting converted to mosques all over the place, where the call to prayer is blasted on speakers 5 times a day. They're seeing people in the carbs. All these towns are getting Islamicized. People are turning into dhimmis. And yet, if you want to talk about it, and if the government in the UK doesn't do anything to you, then these are the people you have to deal with. Even if you try to exercise your right to protest against these issues, it seems like they'll meet you on the roads, on the streets, and try to intimidate you into silence, essentially. Let's see what this bald guy, and these 2 freaks have to say.
As some of you already know, we have made our Manchester Community Watch with over 130 verified members. But we're not going to stop there. I am currently in the process of getting my SIA license because we are creating a security firm to ensure everyone within our community stays safe. I want to give a big shout out to Regent Security Force for coming down all the way from Blackburn to show solidarity. Together, we will make a difference. If anyone would like to join our security team, drop me a message.
Yeah, I guess the combined IQ might be like 3. And this guy is unlikely to be able to produce more than two grandparents. This is the type of environment that exists in Mehdi's homeland of the UK, where there is significant amounts of illegal immigration. And if you think about it, it's really funny, like, because a lot of these people are Pakistani, and they're gaming the system so blatantly these days. They come over as students and apply for asylum while in the UK, so they can't be deported. And it's crazy. I always ask, what the hell are Pakistanis fleeing from? Persecuting non-Muslims, lynching non-Muslims, oppressing women and gays? Is that what they're fleeing from? Like, what the hell do Pakistani Muslims have to fear in Pakistan? Nothing. Unless you, of course, count the war between Pakistan and Afghanistan, where one side is shooting fighter jets with AK-47. So not really a war that they have to be very concerned about. And I think things are actually bad enough where you even have elected representatives talking about inciting violence against people that they disagree with. Just have a look at it.
We are the majority. This country belongs to us. So
Who's us?
yes, we will defeat them at the ballot box, but when necessary, we fight them in the streets as well. Whose streets?
Yeah, as you can tell, when she's talking about fighting people in the streets, she's talking about people like this. This is the plan. They're using street thugs like this, these inbreds. They're going to use them to advance their political agenda. And their political agenda isn't to benefit anyone who's British. It's to benefit their third world Islamic grievance politics. Their priorities are in Gaza, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh. That's where their priorities are. Their priorities, ironically, aren't even in the UK. So when I go back to people like Mehdi saying, oh no, there aren't open borders, illegal migration, it's not actually that big of an issue, and seeking refuge or asylum is a legal right, I'm just like, yeah, maybe shut the fuck up, because I think it is time for people to understand and realize the status quo doesn't have to be the status quo. It in fact is actually quite easy. There is, in fact, a button you can press to reverse a lot of this change. Like, they make it out like none of this is inevitable. Decline is something you have to accept. And you know what? These are the people who are bringing in the Trojan horse of Islam into these countries and hiding behind the progressive movements. Yes, even people like Mehdi Hassan. Honestly, like, I think we've got to stop pretending that people like him, just because they're major commentators, aren't part of the Red-Green Alliance. And you know why? It's because I always say, speaking truth, regardless of what your opponents might say, is the first step in change. Look guys, that's all I have for today. If you enjoyed that video, please give it a like, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and leave your comments down in the comment section below. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
In the neon haze of a broken dawn, still towers hum, but the wild runs on. A shadow moves through the circus below, half machine, half beast, with a violet glow. They thought the outback was lost to the flame, but a jingle